all CEOs, me included, we don't actually know what we're doing.
They're all sharks. So all you got to do, though, is know shark behavior.
I don't think we've ever talked about this before.
We can capture all of the wallet share.
First place you start is with the product.
That's just the first nut.
This is the Capital Stack. Hey, everybody, this is David Paul, the host of the Capital Stack podcast, where I talk to founders, operators, and investors about all things value creation in startups. Today, I am speaking to Dan Soviero of Signature Lacrosse, or Signature Athletics now, about his startup and all of his shenanigans traveling the world the wrong way. Leaders and leadership and teamwork and culture, everything startup importance. Dan, how are you?
David, it's great to be on the show. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
That's just not true. You're already starting line.
Excited to be here. Excited to be here. More for your smile than anything.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your story, Dan.
Yeah. So it's the pretty typical entrepreneurial, started the business in college, had a problem, tried to solve it myself, didn't realize what I was doing, super naive, ended up striking gold on one of the ideas, and then just pivoted my way into where we're at today. So the original idea was all lacrosse balls were the same, and we wanted to make a better lacrosse ball. It was that simple. I was playing Division I lacrosse up at St. John's University in Queens, New York. My dad was really big on us paying rent to stay at his house and to eat his food from a pretty young age. So he kind of pushed us, we call it, into the entrepreneurial spirit.
How young is young?
10. 10,
like
yeah. And,
dude, that's epic. Yeah.
I have phenomenal. The best part is he's the guy that he's an attorney. He's run many successful businesses, and if any of my friends stayed over on Friday night, we knew we could go out, we could party, we could do stuff that at other houses maybe we weren't allowed to do at younger ages. But every Saturday at 5:30, he was going to wake us up and he was going to give us a list. And that list was going to be go out in the yard, cut down this tree, do all this landscaping, whatever it is, paint the house. I mean, we did anything you could think of, hang up in this tree with a chainsaw and take down the branches. And then by about noon, he would come out. He would work side by side with us. And then about noon, he'd go in to get an iced tea and some sandwiches. He'd come out with another freaking list. And that second list, that's when we were good and we could have our fun on Saturday. And I think, at the time, there was a lot of stuff that he was having us do that I was like, Dad, we could just do it this way and it would be half the work. And he would say, no, you're going to do it this way. And the whole time, I'm like, what the hell are we doing? Like, we're just doing work we just don't need to do. And what he was doing was he was intentionally teaching us the principle of hard work, of discipline, of doing it the right way the first time and not trying this innovative new way when you got to get the job done right now. And you can try that in the future when you don't have a job that you got to do right now. And
give an example of that, like where he made you do something the hard way.
So cutting down a tree, I'm talking a big ass tree. I mean, like the girth is like 5 of me, and it's a big tree, and we cut it down. And instead of us, I remember this one vividly. I was like, we have a lawnmower, a driving lawnmower. Let's throw a rope on it. Let's hitch these logs and let's drag them to the street. And he's like, no. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, no, we're going to cut them up and you're going to lift them up and you're going to carry them.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, why? Why would you do that? And he's like, because you should. And so it was just little things like that. And through the course of that, we learned a work ethic that was really incredible. And what he really pushed us into was, he always said, like, you can continue to do this and you'll make minimum wage and I'll pay you like I pay anybody else to do landscaping work with me, or you can go find a way to make more than this much an hour, more than minimum wage an hour. And if you find a way to make more than minimum wage an hour and it's legal, then more power to you. And so he really challenged us to think outside the box on, well, what could we do to make more money than this? And that was just a really, I think, we were really lucky to have a father like that.
So what did he charge you to live there?
He basically charged us however many hours of work we had on that list and however many friends we had sleep over and eat the food.
So he charged you by the list. Like that was
slave labor.
It wasn't like you had to come up with like a nut every week and then like he gave you tasks.
I mean, it might have started that way. And then he's not a CPA. He's more of a visionary entrepreneur type. So I'm sure it started off that way. And then it was like, just get the job done. And if you're not going to do this job, then you got to do a job that's going to earn you more than this job would, so you can cover your nut. Did you
ever say like, I don't want to do that and like not do it?
No,
to see if
that's not an option.
That was not an option.
Not with my father. No.
Okay. You never tested it.
No. I think my brother would have whipped my ass first if I said that. And then my dad would have, and then I would have just been in a whole lot of pain. So, I never even would have thought of that though, honestly. I mean, he made it cool. He made it like, you go out with the men, you go out with the boys, you wake up with the men. He would have all these like sayings that were like, yeah, I want to be like that. That sounds cool. Let's do it.
And he led from the front, right?
Led from the front, from day one, always. Yeah.
Right.
And he still operates that way. It's remarkable. He has no reason to be working as hard as he is right now. And he still works at least 10 hours a day because he just loves it. He loves what he does. And he always followed his passion. And I think that was another thing that we were fortunate to learn from him was do what you love because life is way too short. And what you love is a combination of things. It's kiteboarding, it's your family, it's the business that you're pursuing and building. And you have to pay time and attention and consideration to all of those things, or you're really not going to live a full life and have a happy life. And he just always just did it that way. And so we're really fortunate to be able to see that and not, when I went to college and I talked to a lot of my friends and I got close and we started looking at what we were going to do when we got out of college. And I'm like, well, I have this idea and I really want to do this. And they're all looking at me like, why would you ever do that? That doesn't make any sense. And it's because their folks probably had corporate jobs, had steady income, had like the traditional kind of life. And now looking at where me and my wife are at like 30 years old, we have such a fulfilled life and so much fulfillment in every single day because we're doing what we love and we're making the impact that we want to make every single day. And that's just a life that's worth living.
Mm-hmm. So you don't feel the entrepreneurial slug of getting punched in the face every single day?
Oh no, I feel that every single day. I love it.
No, that's there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's there. Oh yeah, it's a roller coaster of emotion, but at the end of the day, I couldn't imagine having any less responsibility and any less of pressure, all of it. I just genuinely enjoy it.
It carries with it a lot of grace, right? I mean, like to be able to steward a payroll, to be able to steward people's capital and to live with that pressure. I mean, it's an honor.
It really is. It really is. And to have people trust you in that way. And especially I think when you're a younger entrepreneur and you're building for the first time and you're not 60 years old, you don't have 10 businesses that you've already made all these mistakes building. And you're really selling a vision and you're selling people on, trust me as a leader, I'm going to make mistakes. I wish I was 60. I wish this was my 10th time doing this, but it's not. Right. And so we're going to have to learn along the way and trust each other. And I think that's where over-indexing to culture has been just such an important part of Signature and what we've built. And just to bring it back to your original question of the founding story. So we started as Signature Lacrosse. We built a better lacrosse ball. We've sold 25 million or more lacrosse balls at this point. We're the number one ball in the sport. Then we launched complete sticks. They all come game ready right off the shelf. You don't have to string them up like 90% of the other sticks in the market. And then we did quick connect goals. Instead of stringing the net to the goal frame, you hook it in. So it takes 5 minutes instead of 2 hours. And through the series of developing those problem-solving products for the market that we grew up in and that we loved, we realized like the saying cash is king is really valuable. But even more valuable is cash conversion cycle is king. That would be a way better statement for people to propagate around the market. So the more we can blast that from the rooftops, I think we should. And so as we got further along with Signature Lacrosse and we built a national brand and we're doing millions and millions of dollars in sales, and on the P&L, we look good. But on the cash flow model, we don't look as good. And so that led us to our first, okay, let's raise, we had raised debt. And so now let's raise.
So before we go into Capital Stack, just for the people that don't know a lot of financial, FP&A, financial planning, analytics, or analysis, what do you mean by that? If the P&L looks good, how can you not look good on cash?
So cash conversion cycle, which took me a while to fully grasp, is you sell something for $1 and you make, say, 30 cents on it and your costs are 15 cents. On your P&L, it looks like you're making money. You're making 10 cents on every $1 that you sell. But if that $1 that you sold is actually on terms with your client, and so they haven't paid you the cash for it yet, then you now have a receivable, which is a liability. So you do not have the cash on your balance sheet. So you don't have the cash in your bank account, but you already paid for the inventory. Mm-hmm. So you already paid for the inventory. You already sold the inventory. So now you've paid for the inventory, you've sold the inventory, and you don't have the cash from the sale of the inventory. So on the P&L, it looks good. You look profitable. But on the cash flow model, it's saying a different story. And that's cash conversion cycle, the way I understand it in its simplest form. You would probably know better than me, David. I mean,
no, you said it really, really good. It's just because you're selling the item today does not mean you're collecting the cash today, right? And because of that, there is a cycle from making a sale to collecting the cash, and that cycle is different from when you pay employees, right? Which expect to be.
And that cycle is different from when you purchase the inventory and pay for the inventory. And so, yeah, the timing of all of those things is what flows through to the cash flow model, which is what everybody should use to operate their business at all times. Somebody gave me a saying the other day, and I'm going to butcher it, but it was something along the lines of like revenue is vanity, net income is sanity, and cash is reality. And
yeah.
I was like, holy crap, I'm writing that one down. Yeah. So we had launched Signature Lacrosse. It was growing. We were doing well. And then we said, we're building this lacrosse equipment brand. It's a national brand. We live in Tampa. There's not a lot of youth lacrosse in Tampa. I've always coached my whole life and felt an obligation to give back to the game. And I think that's really where Signature Lacrosse even started. The vision was always, how can we give more kids the same opportunity that we were fortunate enough to have through sports? And so when we got to a decent scale with Signature Lacrosse, we had made some problem-solving products, but what were we really doing to get more kids involved and to give more kids the same opportunities we had? Really nothing. And that was pretty eye-opening when a mentor challenged me on that. He said, well, you say this is your vision and you say this is your mission, but then you're building this lacrosse equipment company and like, it's a better product. I get that. But is that really helping more kids get the same experience you had? They had balls. Now they have balls. Your balls are a little better.
Right.
I don't know. And it really struck me as like, well, there isn't lacrosse. Lacrosse wasn't really big in Tampa. And so we took over we helped out with a struggling youth program. We ended up taking it over and restructuring it and making it profitable for that community. And then we were hired by a couple other communities locally here in Tampa to do the same thing. And that launched Signature Events, which has since grown into a multi-million-dollar a year business. And it does now 4-night, 5-day sleepaway camps. adventure sports camps in Florida, Tennessee, and New York. It's run by my wife, Madeline, who's a phenomenal entrepreneur. You should definitely have her on this podcast. Mm-hmm. She's a lot better looking than me. So we launched Signature. So we had Signature Lacrosse, Signature Events. And then in about 2019, we took a step back and we said, okay, what are we really good at? We've found problems in the market and we've solved them. And it didn't matter if it was rubber compression molding, metal extrusion. It didn't matter if it was carbon fiber bladder molding. It didn't matter if it was plastic injection molding. I'll fly my ass over to China. I'll learn how it's done. I'll meet the people. We'll make a great product. We'll bring it to market, and we'll solve a problem in the sport. And that all worked. It was all great. But when we got to this point in 2019, we said, okay, if we're really good at finding a problem and solving it, what is the biggest problem on a youth program and a travel program's P&L? What's the biggest expense that they have, their biggest problem that we could solve to make youth sports at scale more sustainable? And what I mean by that is there are macro trends in the youth sports market right now that are not good. Volunteerism is falling. Dual household incomes are going up. Mom and dad both working. There's no one to volunteer at night. By the time you get to the fields, you're tired. You don't want to volunteer. So the cost of youth sports is going up in some places, but at the youth program level, it's really not, because if you think about a youth program, a local town program, it's usually run by a volunteer. That volunteer is usually there for maybe 2 years. Mm-hmm. Are they going to make meaningful changes in those 2 years? Maybe when they first get there, they're going to try and do something new, but 9 times out of 10, they're not. So we said, okay, if this macro change is coming and their number one expense is uniforms, and they're including the uniforms with the registration fees, how can we really solve that problem for them? And so at the time, there was a 10% error rate across the custom team uniform market. The way it is traditionally done in the market, it's been the same way for 25, 30 years. I'm a program director. I go collect all the sizes and order information from all the players in the program. I submit that order to usually a retailer. That retailer submits it to a broker that they think is the factory. It's never the factory. The broker then sends it to the factory. The factory produces it, sends a big box of stuff to the retailer. Retailers don't typically do quality control because they're in the retail business. They're not in the manufacturing business. So they just slap a label on it and pass the big box to the program director to do the last mile delivery and hand out the uniforms at the fields. If I told you the amount of stories of the things that have come out of that box when it's opened at the field, it is remarkable. And so we basically said, how do we just flip that on its head and turn that into an on-demand model where we're actually shipping direct to the parent's door, and the program director doesn't have to do that last mile delivery, and the order information the program director doesn't have to touch.
Yeah, it's owned by the parent, so it's on them.
So so we launched what we call the Fanatics of Youth Sports, signaturelocker.com, and we have solved the number one problem in youth sports, which is ordering custom uniforms and team swag is a nightmare. It is no longer a nightmare for all of our clients, and that has been one of the most fulfilling things, because what it does is it allows us to really connect our vision to our day-to-day actions. And it's created this alignment around the culture and around the team to the point where, as I shared with you, we just recently won the Inc. 2024 Best Places to Work, which is a national recognition for a company that is 100% remote. And it's because we've really overinvested in that culture piece. So little long-winded answer to tell me your story, but I hope it was valuable for the listeners.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great story. You tied your passion and you found kind of like, okay, we started selling equipment. That's great. But you were challenged about like, this is your mission. This is your output. Like, how do I really do that? And, by adding the events piece, by adding like another pain point that's significant that actually alleviates the industry as a whole. I mean, my kids are young, and my daughter just got, asked to be in like this competitive gymnastics thing. And I was reading the pamphlet and I was just so stoked. Right.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like, it's just like she's like on a team and, like there's, accountability. Your hair's got to be in a bun. Now she's got to eat better. It's just like I'm just more enthused. And, hopefully it's going to be less time with her face and an iPad.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something special about sports. It's a vacuum for kids to learn things that otherwise they would only learn in their household from mom and dad if they listen. And
if they're good parents, right? Like, which is like,
it's a hard task.
That's a hard task. And it's like, I think it takes a village to raise kids. It takes coaches, it takes neighbors, it takes a lot of people.
I think everyone on our team would agree with you and would say that's a big part of the reason why they're here at Signature and doing what they're doing every day.
So what is like the North Star metric from your customer perspective that you roll out to your team as saying like, hey, we're actually fulfilling our mission?
It's a great question. We've played around with a couple, but the clients that we have signed to multi-year agreements, are they growing their registration numbers? If they are growing their registration numbers, we're doing a damn good job at taking the BS work that was on their plate off their plate so they can focus on the only thing that matters, which is coaching the coaches to deliver an incredible experience to the players and the families involved, and then getting more net new kids involved in sport.
Right. And, you can look at that as a revenue number, but if you say, hey, this is an MRR, is it really, I mean, yes, it's more MRR, but are you connecting it with actually more kids in sport? And it takes you as a CEO to actually, juxtapose that information with the actual like signups and connect them to saying like, hey, more kids are playing sports because of us. Yeah.
And it's a really, I think one of the cool things to see more recently is as we've proven this model out in lacrosse, we then scaled into soccer and field hockey. And more recently, in the last 4 months, we've started to roll out to enterprise level accounts. And so going after some of these like franchise opportunities, what we've seen is the value, they're trying as hard as they can to fulfill on the vision that we have as a company. And they share in their company, which is get more kids involved in sport. And so if we can take the work off of somebody like that, who's doing a franchise model, we can actually scale our impact a lot more significantly and a lot quicker. And so one great example of that in the last 4 months, to start 2024, we had 35 or 40,000 players under contract between all the programs we had signed. And we set a goal that we were going to have 100,000 players signed by the end of 2024. As of this podcast, I think like May 15th of this year, we have 130,000 players under contract now.
Wow.
So we smashed that goal. And what we'll see is by the end of 2024, in that same cohort of clients that we're serving, of programs that we're working with, we will actually see them increase in size, and we should be closer to like 140, 150,000.
Cool. I know my camera's dead. It died, which really pisses me off because it's plugged in. It shouldn't die, but you're better looking, so it doesn't matter as long as they can see you. So how has technology fit into your offering? Right. Like how have you tech enabled this service that you're providing?
So we created a custom in-house homegrown software called Athletech. Get it? Athletic.
Yeah. It's wonderful.
And so that software is really at the core of our ability to deliver completely custom last name, number, variable data plotted into a predefined drop zone on a dye sublimation cut and sew piece that's made on demand. And it allows us to really empower the factory partners that we work with all across the world, mainly in the US, but all across the world. And then it also allows us to empower the Signature Locker team store experience and that client-facing UI UX all the way through to the how is the factory actually going to receive this order without ever having to touch it, including the artwork, so that there is zero room for human error in the production process. And so that that industry average order error rate that I mentioned earlier of 10%, we are actually at under 2%, and we will be under 0.5% by the end of this year on a trailing 12-month basis.
So are these factories set up for, I mean, it's kind of, so what you essentially kind of talked about is an API, correct?
It's a lot more than that. The API allows us to pass the data through, but the platform that we've built actually allows us to convert the order information into production-ready art files and then associate those with the orders and then pass them through an API.
And so how do they receive it? Like how does a factory like receive that information? Like what kind of stack are they dealing with?
They're dealing with Applitech.
So they're using your software.
Yep.
Okay, and their software is plugged into their machine?
No, from our order information, they can process the order by just taking that approved art file associated with that individual one-off order and then loading it into their existing process, their existing ERP. So we can do that either through a manual handoff of the order, the art file, where they're not editing it in any way, they're just ingesting the order, or we can do that through an API, to your point, directly into their order flow. And we
Got
do
it. So you're creating like here's what you need, plug it into your system. You know, if there's any error, it's because it's on our side, not your side.
Exactly. So we take all the onus on quality management and
which is probably a huge like benefit to them because they don't have to field angry calls.
Well, it is, and it's what's wrong with the market. They should get orders that are ready to be produced. That it just should be that easy. They're a contract manufacturer. They should do that really, really well at the highest level possible. And in order to do that, all they need is standard inputs so they can ingest the orders the same way and run the same process every single time, and then optimize and improve to the point where they can meet the service level agreements before they're an approved factory to be on our platform.
Got it. Cool. Super, super, super cool. Do you have, I'm sure there is, besides cash flow conversion cycle, are there any type of learnings that you wish you knew when you started that you know now?
I think there's too many to count. I'm trying.
All right, how about this? How did you go like across the world the wrong way?
Yeah, that's a good story. The first time I decided I was going to go to China, where we were, I had been working with a gentleman over there for probably 2 or 3 years since I was a junior in high school on how to make a better ball. I had found a rubber chemist on LinkedIn from Shell Oil. He had helped me with the formula, the manufacturing process. Then I pinned a bunch of manufacturers across the world against each other to do a sampling process. Found the person that we wanted to move forward with, and around 2016, I decided that the way that they would know that I was all in on this and I had cojones was if I just went over there. And so I just went over for a month by myself. And the joke at the company is that is the first and last flight that I was ever to schedule. I went the wrong way through Europe, and I ended up doing a 36-hour journey. And so I spent like that New Year's in a Swiss airport bathroom. And my then girlfriend, now wife, Madeline, was like, "Yep, that's the last time. We'll make sure that your flights are taken care of, so you don't end up doing that to yourself again."
I love that. I love that story. I love that story because that's how like you initially like pitched yourself to me. It's like I went around the world the wrong way.
That's the grind. It's all part of,
it's so beautiful.
It's all part of the journey. You know, extra time to listen to podcasts like this one.
Exactly. Dan, thank you so much for coming on. If somebody wants to learn more about Signature Lacrosse as an investor, as a customer, as like a super fan, how do they get in touch with you?
So there's a couple different ways. If you have kids that you want to send to a summer lacrosse, field hockey, or soccer camp, overnightsportscamps.com is the number one place for adventure sports camps in the entire world. Signaturelacrosse.com is the source for all of the best lacrosse equipment, the number one ball in lacrosse. And then signaturelelocker.com is where we run all of our team stores and where we do all the uniforms and team swag on demand delivered direct to the players. If you want to follow along the journey, you can follow me, Dan Soviero, Soviero, on LinkedIn. I try to post pretty regularly about youth sports and some of the tailwinds and some of the macro trends that we're seeing and how we're helping to combat them to really grow youth sports. So if that's something you're interested in, and we're always looking for the best salespeople in the world. So if you got a referral, send them our way.
Awesome. Thank you guys, everybody. If you like what you heard, please subscribe, tell a friend, give Dan a follow. And we drop an episode every Tuesday. So if you like, keep listening up and subscribe. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Thank you for tuning in to the Capital Stack Podcast. Make sure to share this with someone you know that can benefit from this content. Remember to support this show by rating, reviewing, and subscribing. David Paul is the founder and general partner at DWP Capital. All opinions expressed by David and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of DWP Capital. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for decisions. David and guests may maintain positions in the securities discussed on this podcast.